Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today with me on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those who are wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to take different life cycles and we're going to explore them both emotionally and financially, because personal finances, believe it or not, are actually more about the emotions associated with your finances than the money itself. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion, we'd love to hear from you, so please do reach out. We'd love to make it more relevant. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments and questions on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're listening. For most of my clients, I hear how the experience of going through a divorce is trying, it's challenging, brutal, and many other descriptions we probably can't share on the radio. Today, however, we are going to talk about how divorce was a springboard for my guest. And this is just such a unique statement. The concept of going through a divorce and having it as a springboard, that alone should have people kind of dropping whatever they're doing, stop typing on the keyboard, turn up the volume and listen, because not only is it kind of revolutionary to go through a divorce and have that, but quite honestly, it's life-changing to be able to say this at the end of a very, very trying and challenging time in your life. Christy Stratton is my guest today. We have worked together in a couple different ways. She is a divorce coach. She is a radio host extraordinaire and a favorite of mine. Christy has taken her life experiences and used them to help others not just get through adversity, however, use adversity and find the opportunity within it to become their springboard. Christy, I am so thrilled to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Hirsch. I'm delighted to be here. And you said I was a favorite of yours. So I know you're just, you've got many favorites. So I appreciate that. But you're a favorite of mine. It's been fun to work with you, learn from you, and, ultimately, work together to serve people in one of the biggest challenges of life.
I agree. We've both experienced it. We're going to talk about that a little bit as we go. I think there's never as strong a passion as when you've used your personal experiences to get through something and use that to help others. So with that, I'm actually going to ask if you can share a little bit about your background and where your practice focuses and how you kind of came to do what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you for that opportunity. I'm always working to get out there and talk to people about that because, like you said, we've been there. And I often say this lightly. I don't think divorce is a light topic, right. But I wouldn't be a divorce coach if I hadn't gone through divorce. And and oftentimes, we really can't, as you were saying, we can't necessarily know what it's like until we've been through something, the loss of parents, the sickness of a child, things like that. And our eyes are opened. And when they are, we look back and we go, how did I even get through this? And so a little bit about my background is, my background's actually in marketing and public relations. And, life, it takes you on maybe a little bit of a different journey than you thought. I thought I would be married and have kids and live this wonderful life. And, it didn't happen that way. And so when divorce did happen, and my brother's a family law attorney, and he said he thought it was one of the worst divorces he's ever seen. I don't know that that's true, but it felt that way to me. It felt like life was crumbling. And as I kind of put one foot in front of the other, I realized in this state of, for me, renewal, finding myself again, figuring out who I was, what my calling was, what my purpose was. And it came about for me that I was to help other people go through the biggest transitions of life, one of them being divorce. At that point, this was somewhere in the realm of 2009. At that point, divorce coaching really wasn't out there.
Right.
And so I often say now, where was I then, right? And so as I discovered that divorce coaching was out there, I had already certified in coaching I'm a ACC coach through the International Coach Federation, had been coaching for several years, and then learned about the specialty in divorce coaching, went through a great program called Certified Divorce Coaches, and certified in that. And for me, I'm a woman of faith. And at that point, God just opened the doors and offered me a radio show in a Christian station. I mean, I'm talking about divorce on a Christian station, but we really talk about that concept, Hirsch. You said it perfectly, the springboarding from it. And I really focus a lot more in the recovery through divorce, through life's challenges, which starts with even the consideration of divorce.
You know, and it's, I want to point out a couple of things you said. One of the things you said is, where were you during your divorce, meaning obviously as a divorce coach?
I know, I needed one. I didn't go so well.
I went through a divorce 7 years ago, and that's really when I started doing what I'm doing. And I'm sure you have the same. How often have you heard, where were you when I got divorced, right? And luckily for people in today's world, I think there are significantly more resources than there were even when I was going through 7 years ago. And that's a lot of involvement in an industry in a pretty short time. The program you went through, the CDC, is a fantastic program, probably the pioneer of divorce coaching.
I believe so. Many are trying to copy it these days.
Yeah. And I always say, you know, the attorney has always been there. You needed that because there's a legal document at the end of the process that has to get signed. And they are not an expert in divorce coaching. They are not an expert in finance, in therapy, and everything else that comes with this. And so now being able to add people to your mix counterintuitively is cheaper and more effective. And talking about all of that, I'm going to ask, because I think everybody's heard of a therapist. Everyone's heard of a financial expert. But when it comes to a therapist, people often lump, I think, you know, the divorce coach in with the therapist. Oh, you know, they're all the same thing, but not really understanding that there is a very big difference. So can you share a little bit on each role? So as we have our discussion, people really understand more the role that you play within everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I actually was on my path to get my master's in psychology, and even with the thought of, you know, therapy, that sort of thing, when another life event, losing my parents in a span of 5 months, happened. And that's why I shifted towards coaching. And so, you know, I like to take the complex and simplify it as best I can. And really what we want to look at is therapy is kind of looking backwards. Coaching is looking forward. It's not that they don't cross over, not that there's not a need for both, but there are certain mental health issues that a coach who is just certified or accredited in coaching without licensure as a psychotherapist or a counselor, anything like that, does not really firmly understand the abnormalities from the brain science, so to speak. And so that's really the difference. You know, Hirsch, you talked about that team, and that team, a therapist may very well be involved, and a coach can work with a therapist. Right. An attorney can work with a coach and a therapist. We as coaches are going to help people look at kind of current state and where we're going through it. What I often like to say is we're there to help them look at things eyes wide open from a real perspective, not what we think it might be, right, but really getting to the reality of the situation. And then as their thinking partner, we walk along with them to make decisions and choices. We're their cheerleader, at the same time, their accountability partner. We're, again, you know, to be redundant, but I think it's a very good description, is a thinking partner. We're not focused on the mental health situation of it. Well, again, that's important. I don't want to give that any less importance. but we're focused on walking with them through the path, making better decisions for their future into the 10, 20, 30 years from now.
And it's funny, I was thinking about taping that part of your intro where you talk about exactly what you just spoke about, because I could not say it the way that you do as well as you do. But one of the things I love about what you do is you walk that path with them, and you are that independent, objective voice for them. And that's not an easy thing when you're in the thick of things. No. It's a very difficult place to be. I call it that fog of emotion, the chaos that's going on inside your body, and being able to have someone right there at every stage who not only has been trained in it, but has experienced it, I think is such an invaluable piece to have with you. And I'm going to ask you, I mean, the show is called, talking about how this was your springboard, your divorce. Talk about that. You say that divorce was your springboard. Tell us a little bit more about why you say that. I mean, that's just such an enormously powerful statement to put out there.
Yes, well, and I love that, because I'm really defining my business even more and more to be about that springboard, that recovery. And in fact, I have a book coming out this year called From Rubble to Roses, Growing Through the Losses of Life. And it really took, and Hirsch, you spoke about that fog. It took me reaching out to others and finding resources to help me get out of the fog. Another way to look at it is, and from maybe a Christian perspective, it's kind of veils over the eyes. And for me, God lifted these veils over time. When I was young and 26, I kind of was like living this kind of unconscious world, thinking that everything's going to be just, super coming up roses, right?
Right.
without the thorns. And then divorce, boom, opened my eyes. And I found, luckily, I started in transformational coaching at that point. And I speak about the fact that in that, I began breathing for the first time again. I think I was holding my breath all my life. And once it turns out you got to have some oxygen, right? You get some oxygen to your mind, and you start seeing what is. And then when you have that awareness, you can start making some better choices. And that was 2006 when I separated. Divorce was 2007 when it was finalized. And it was 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And really, I'm a slow learner. It took me a long time to really get to where I had clarity. And it continues to be that. Like, every phase is a change. But I didn't want to feel that way anymore.
Right.
And so I got help. My eyes were opened. I made better choices, and I designed my life with the help of others. You can't do it on your own.
No, that's powerful. And, I think sometimes you're in that fog for so long. It's not like, we filed for divorce and now all of a sudden we're in the middle of all of this. Things have been building up, and sometimes for years it's been building up. And then, you go through an even more stressful time, because now it becomes a bit of a battleground, right? It's not what it was, because everybody's scared for their future. So I think sometimes you're not even realizing the fog that you're in, because you're so used to it that you don't realize you're not thinking as clearly as you could, or you're not being as objective as you could. So being able to say that. And so while you were going through your divorce, did you feel like, yes, this is an opportunity. I'm going to grow. I'm going to come out of the rubble, in the middle of this chaos? Or
That's a good question. I mean, I probably had moments of that because I was in a coaching program, and this was before coaching was really widely accepted. And so I had a support system, and then again, that objective viewpoint. So there were probably moments of it, but more I can remember flying down I was in Las Vegas, flying down to Houston to spend time with a friend who was also recently divorced. Sorry, something just got in my eye, so now I can't see. We'll try to work through that. But then going back home and going back to the reality of, I was in an apartment by myself, and kind of crumbling, with the reality. So there were moments of highs and lows.
So was that your eureka moment? Was there, I mean, there might not have been one eureka moment, but what changed that made you realize what an opportunity this could be, not just in spurts, but kind of really grabbing onto that and getting an energy around how this could be that?
To be honest, Hirsch, and that's all I can be, I don't know that I had a eureka moment. It's really, I was in my journaling yesterday. I wish I had it here in front of me. I'm kind of in another phase of change. And I think I was just, slow and steady, putting a foot in front of the other. And with my faith, knowing that things would be okay. And that was probably the crux of it, my faith. If I hadn't had my faith, I don't know where I'd be. And so I just had that foundation to just keep moving. And then once you get there, you look back and you see the progress you made. So I don't know for me that I had this eureka moment.
Right.
There were some points and times that I had some awarenesses come to me that I was being led, like, okay, your calling is to teach and coach and speak. And when those opportunities came, like the radio show, I mean, my life has changed so much since the radio show came into my life 2 years ago. I would have never guessed that I would have had a radio show about divorce coaching. Now, I've been involved in media, but I never would have thought about, on a Christian station, no less, about divorce coaching.
and I will say, I mean, just from knowing you are a teacher. That's a lot of what you've done, but teaching about something so close to the heart and something where you've been so vulnerable and experienced pain is not an easy thing to move to. You tend to go with what you're familiar with. I mean, that's logical, right? We all do that. Moving in that direction, I just need to kind of do a shout out, I guess, because not only is it getting you out of your comfort zone, but what you've done with that is helped so many other people as well. And one of the things, you speak about journaling, you speak about faith, you speak about things like this, and not just on the radio. I'm going to ask a little bit, like, were you a self-care person, and did that change? Because I'll tell you, during my divorce, I used to look at that self-care stuff like hippie kind of stuff, like what? Yeah, and I'm sold. I mean, I will be honest, I'm sold. I listen to my body. My body tells me when something's not sitting right. I meditate. I look at a lot. I do a lot of these kind of things that 6 months before my divorce I would have laughed at, to be quite honest, and I don't anymore. I encourage people. What were some of the things you did in that realm of self-care?
Well, I guess I've always been interested in the mind. I'm a very curious person, and so I was drawn to that. Even when after divorce, I was kind of just wondering what's my next step. Before I left the corporate world, and I've always thought I'm going to go get my MBA. And I looked around at all the books that I was reading. So speaking of, was I a self-care person? I think I was more of like a mind person. And I looked around and I had all of these psychology books around me. I'm like, I'm getting my master's in psychology. But so somewhere in there, but I know one of the things I did in the first 2 weeks after my husband asked me for a divorce, I had my rear in my therapist's seat every morning. I couldn't function. I was blindsided by it. And so I sat there, I went there every morning. And so I started with my counselor, and she told me this. She said, if you can't do anything else, journal 3 things in the morning and 3 things in the evening that you're grateful for. And those were some of the things that's just all I could get up and get done. And I used that again when both of my parents passed, when I would basically fall out of bed and crumble, to the ground again. It sounds like I've crumbled a lot, but there's moments of pain, and then it's like you pick yourself up with help and support, and
right.
And you take those baby steps, and before you know it, you are walking strong with courage. And then when you turn your attention to support others, it makes it all worth it.
It's funny you say that. You know, one of the keys obviously is not just that, you know, we all have our emotions, especially during divorce. And I've had people say to me 15 months later, why is this Thanksgiving all of a sudden? I've been divorced 15 months. Well, you know, that's the first one where you didn't have the kids, or there's a lot of those kind of things that play in. But the key is that you get through it and then you talk about it and you're strong enough to be able to move forward for the next one. You know, they say, oh, I've fallen 100 times. The key is that I get up 101, right? So I think what you're saying is very powerful in being able to move forward, understanding, and I'm going to get to this after because we do need to take a break, but it's kind of setting up a little bit of a discussion around those stumbling blocks, because you know, it's not a fluid recovery from a difficult situation. We do, as you say, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, understanding they're going to be setbacks. And I think all of that's very important. And I'm going to ask, before we go to a break, if you can just share what is a quick, easy way for people to get in touch with you. We're going to come talk a little bit about how they can listen to your radio show as well, which I will say approaching 100 shows, very impressive.
Yes,
so I am
exciting.
nowhere near that, or not yet. I will be, but if you can just share quickly how people can get in touch with you.
You know, they can go, if they want to learn more about divorce coaching, since that's what we're talking about, is go to the divorcecoachinghour.com. That's embedded in my website. So the divorcecoachinghour.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram or ChristyStratton.com. Those are the easiest ways. So you see that there on the screen, ChristyStratton.com or the divorcecoachinghour.com, and you'll learn a little bit more.
Great. And we will be right back. Thanks. Hello and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have Christy Stratton here today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. Today we're talking about how Christy put it, divorce was her springboard. And I was not making a list every time I dipped my head and made a note. I was not doing grocery shopping. I was putting together some of the things we've spoken about. And I just want to recap them. I like to do that because I think we cover so many things sometimes in a show, you forget what happened even just 20 minutes ago, right? So
yes.
We did speak a little bit about your background. We spoke about how you came to do what you do and the passion behind because of personal experience and the difficulty within the process that you went through. We spoke about therapy versus coaching, why divorce was your springboard. We spoke about, and I can't read my notes, while you were in your divorce and why you sometimes had those moments, but there wasn't like a eureka moment, which I think is you kind of evolve into it because your growth through a divorce is your growth personally is usually so much quicker than that same period if you weren't going through the adversity you were. We're going to speak about, and we started a little bit on kind of the stumbling blocks and the things that get in the way, and looking at your divorce. But in addition to not just your divorce, you've worked with many clients. I'm going to ask you, can you talk a little bit about some of the major stumbling blocks that you see people encounter as they go through a divorce, and how do they overcome some of those in a healthy manner?
Good question. And that is like straight to the heart of the matter, because what we don't want to do is do this again. And, we've come through a time, there's all different scenarios, and every divorce is different. And one of the things I want to just throw in there is, when of somebody going through a divorce, for those of you who are listening, don't say, I know what you're going through. You don't. Everything is different. And really all people want is just an ear to listen. I mean, as a coach, 90% of the time I'm listening, 10% I'm talking. They just want to know somebody's in their corner, and their situation is unique to themselves. And so there's a whole bunch of different scenarios. But one thing that we do see is there's a lot of pain associated. It is a loss. And one of the problems, I think probably the first thing, Hirsch, is that we have to understand it's a loss, and we need to grieve that loss. Yeah. Oftentimes, divorce is a multifaceted thing. In yesteryear was not accepted at all. If you're a Christian, I mean, some of you may be going, wait a second, she's a Christian and she's divorced. Yeah, it happens. Didn't go into marriage thinking that. I often say I don't think many people go to the altar and go, I'm going to get divorced. But right. It happened. But here's the other thing. So first, it's a loss. We need to grieve it. We need to get the help that we need to grieve it. And grieving is a process. It's not one and done. It's a process. It will take you time. The other thing is, if I had to do it over again, what I've learned when I actually got married is I really didn't understand marriage. And truth be told, people might just shudder a little bit, but I'm about being honest because I don't want people to go through this again. And I don't want to go through it again. I wasn't truly in love. I didn't know what love was. I've learned love outside of relationship, what love is. And a lot of people might be going, what does that mean? Because of my faith and my love of Jesus Christ, I've learned what true intimacy is. And we unfortunately make the mistake that we perceive sexual intimacy as true intimacy. True intimacy is a knowing of another in a friendship, respectful type of manner, compatibility. That's different than sexual intimacy. And so we're just craving, typically after we get out of a broken relationship, attention and care and love, what we perceive to be love. And so we jump right into something else. And I'm not saying this from I didn't do it. I did. I dated a fine gentleman for 3.5 years after I divorced. But I knew we wouldn't do well together ultimately. Right. And he's happily married now. It was probably one of the hardest things to do because he's such a great guy. And, but we're friends, and it wouldn't have been the right thing. So saying no to that is the right thing to do. Jumping into another relationship, getting the work done. A lot of people try to put a time frame on it, 5 months, 6 months. Right. You need to get through it first. And so that's probably knowing it's a loss, grieving it. Secondarily, don't jump into another relationship. And you'll know when the time is right.
It's so interesting you said it. There's two things I want to comment there. One of them, I've had more than one client, quite a few say, oh, my neighbor went through a divorce and I watched, or I was, friends and supported or whatever. And I say to them, your next door neighbor who has the same kind of car, similar size family, similar house, and has completely different divorce to what you go through. Everyone's is a very personal experience. having the right people support you is a different thing than them understanding what you're going through, as you put it. The other thing, and this is an article or a book I read quite a while ago, but it speaks to what you were saying. We have inside us, we have this desire for connection, for love, for intimacy, for all the things that you spoke about. And he puts it as, especially in today's world of a million, marketing messages, the counterfeits that sound or feel similar, but are not the same. And we go into those, what he calls counterfeits. We go into that, and then we wonder, why am I not fulfilled? And that's not a healthy situation. So you mentioned it earlier as well, understanding, and this is how I work, from prioritizing. When you know your values and your priorities, it's easier to identify how to move forward with a lot of these things as well. So I think what you've just said is enormously important for people to internalize. You've got the rest of your life. Don't rush into a relationship in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It doesn't make sense. Sometimes, especially, you might not even remember who you are because you've been married for, 20 years.
I just got to
you're
jump
a totally
in.
different person. I got married in my mid-20s. I got divorced in my mid-40s. I wasn't the same person as when I got married. I had to learn who I was again. And, and that was actually my first blog. I think I've shared it with you. Originally, I called it Divorce is Awesome, right? I was told to change the name. So I did. But it speaks to a little bit of it being a springboard. It really can create opportunities, but you got to know yourself to know the opportunity that it creates, I think, as well.
So important. And you hit on values, and that actually is the crux of the work that I do with people, whether I'm working with entrepreneurs and them starting a new business. That's a huge life change. So I work through my overall just powerful people practices for life's biggest transitions, including divorce. But one of them is even starting a business. I work with people doing that, or making a big shift in life, or going through divorce. And what we start with is values. And what I've learned over time is that if you don't know your values, whose values are you living by? And oftentimes we have gotten into a marriage, and as you said, we've changed, and we're living on the other person's values because we really were never that solid on ours. And so that goes back to that intimacy and that friendship and that companionship. When we love someone and we want the best for them, we want them to live in their values, and we want to love and respect that, versus them changing to be what we need. But when we're strong in our own values, we can see that. And so I love that you said values, and it's, and matter of fact, I'll just offer to any of your listeners, if they want to reach out to me, I'll send them a free values assessment. My clients tell me, total game changer. We just did a program, and the program centered on values was the gal said, this was a game changer for me personally and professionally.
Well, it's always nice to get freebies, especially one that can change your life. I mean, freebies are usually a hook. In the way of it's something kitschy being given away, but if you can really learn about yourself, you can start to learn live a substantive life that's just incredibly enjoyable and satisfying. Which is,
I have to be honest, I'm terrible with the whole hook thing. I just want to help people, and so sometimes I actually forget that I've got a business to build, and I got to keep a roof over my head. But I'm so passionate about it that, of course, if they want to explore coaching with me, then that's great.
Absolutely.
I only want to work with people who are coachable, who want to change. And we do have an event coming up where we're actually going to we've kind of pulling this all around. This kind of springboard concept for any phase of your life is a boot camp. And so we're working on that right now, and we'll be holding that here. I'm in the Houston, Texas area. So there are opportunities to come to some events that they can begin to learn about this values work that we do. But if that's not the thing for them, then have them reach out to me. I'll share that values worksheet. And
absolutely.
At least
that's great. I appreciate it. And that actually, I mean, leads me actually into a thought that you and I have discussed a few times. We've spoken on the radio, we've spoken offline, we've had brainstorming sessions together, on different things. I'm going to ask you to share a little bit, because this has come up in more than one conversation between you and me, why you think it's so important that people understand their needs and their values ahead of time, both emotionally and financially, before or during that divorce, as opposed to trying to figure it out at the end of it all. Why is it so important to know all of this ahead of time?
Oh gosh, that's a huge and wonderful question. So first and foremost, when we come to a place of stress, our mind goes to this place called the lizard brain. We were kind of referencing earlier the fog, right? And we can't make good decisions. And so I have somebody in my life who says, in divorce, you've got two people who are in a fog that are charged with making decisions about the rest of their lives. So it's like, and so that leads me to answer your question by, I say a confused mind says no. And so when you don't have that, like yourself around people, you as a financial coach, to help you pull you out of that fog and look at the reality of the situation, you don't make good decisions. That's the plain and simple of it.
Right.
When I say, where was I back then? I didn't make good decisions, and I thought I was. And I even had a counselor, but she wasn't trained in the divorce process. I was in Las Vegas on my own. My brother here, being a family law attorney, really couldn't help me different laws. But I was in such a fog. And let me just say this. You would think that family could help you. Oftentimes family can't, because they're not objective. And we don't want to hear from family members. So we need to hear from someone like yourself, Hirsch, who can say, hey, this is something that maybe you haven't thought of. Let's, let the story that you're repeating about how bad he or she is go for a moment. Let's look at the numbers and get them out of that fog and look at that. Let's together now look 10 years, 20 years down the road.
Right.
What do you want in life? And now let's back into it. What choices are you going to have to make? So maybe that couch that you guys are fighting over that's worth $500 because I just want it and I don't want him to have it, right, is really not all that important, because you've got retirement to think about. You've got your kids to think about, all those sorts of things. So I don't know if I necessarily answered your question, but ultimately, I'm going to go back to that eyes wide open, and you just need to look at everything with your eyes wide open to be able to make the best decisions.
And I think it comes back to the values discussion we were having earlier. That couch for $500 really isn't playing into your values. It's really just causing stress at this point.
You're just mad. I mean, you're just mad.
Yeah. And I would add, I've seen this on several occasions where you're getting close, and then the one spouse says to the other, well, how much do you want for maintenance? And you say, I don't know. If you don't understand and you don't look forward and you don't have somebody objectively to help you look at that, it's not going to play out well, because if you just throw out a number, it's shot in the dark and it could be the wrong number. I have said to people all the time, I've mentioned it on this radio show, this divorce is actually the first stage or chapter in the rest of your life. It's not the last chapter in this part of your life. And you really are setting up the rest of your life with this. And not just on the financial side. It's important, obviously, to say, how much am I going to get if I'm the one receiving maintenance? Can I live on that? What do I maybe need to do to supplement it? Do I need to change some of the things in my life? How do I keep the things that are of value to me? Those are all important things. But I would go well beyond the finances as well. The $500 couch, and if you're just trying to stick it to the other person and you're just trying to get your pound of flesh, what happens when you meet somebody else and now you want to go away for a week, but it's your week with the kids? How cooperative is that ex-spouse going to be? Oh, I'm sorry, it's a really busy week for me. Oh, I've got to travel for business. You set yourself up. How are you going to co-parent? How are you going to live? When you see that person, how are you going to interact? What is the the role model that you're going to be for your kids. There is so much that you got to consider. And coming back to, you have values, but you can't really live them to the fullest when you're in that fog. So I think all of these things play in, and having those objective views, whether it's on the financial side or the emotional side, I think just becomes so incredibly important for people to think about as well.
One of my guests, and it was echoed by a couple of my other guests as well, is so you come to divorce. Fact of the matter is, somehow, somewhere it got broken along the way. Now, who do you want to be looking back at yourself? Is this an opportunity to not make things worse? So if I've made things worse and we're here at a broken place, then what are the choices I'm going to make to maybe change my life and not make it broken anymore? Right? And so the other thing is I guess to kind of echo that same thing is, okay, so it didn't work. Holding on to that and trying to still make it work as it was doesn't, right? So now we need to be designing a new way to move forward, living separate lives so that we can be healthy and go on. And I think that's ultimately what we want. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Hirsch, but we want people to, again, to use my words for my book, grow through the losses of life, but come out on the other side as a healthier person. Definitely. I did through struggle, but it wasn't easy. But now the resources, as you said, are there. And if we can just admit that we can't do it on our own, go get someone like yourself, Hirsch, come to someone like myself or all the other many coaches, be coachable. Open the ears, open the eyes, and realize this is your opportunity to make a difference and not live in that broken place any longer.
And I just want to throw out, I think we've just discovered the next show, how to work with a divorce coach, when to do it, how to open your eyes. I do encourage people to tune into your radio show. I have listened to it often, the Divorce Coaching Hour. And Christy, I'm going to ask, we have to start wrapping up. I wish we didn't have to. Can you just share again, how can people get in touch with you? And then we really got to wrap this up because we're getting to the edge of our time. So.
Well, thank you again, Hirsch, for the opportunity. And I want to say thank you for supporting the Divorce Coaching Hour. You're a great partner. We have a lot of exciting things coming up. So you guys listen for Hirsch on my show. You can find us on in Houston, 100.7 FM, KKHT, the word. You can find us online at kkht.com. That's kkht.com. We're every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. We're also podcasted. So many of the podcast apps, you can type in the Divorce Coaching Hour and you'll find me there. We're working to expand that reach. So those are some ways to hear the show. Lots of things. I talk about men in divorce and kids in divorce and finances and growing through the losses of life and mental health and all the different things to help walk through this process so that you're growing through it and becoming stronger. And otherwise, ChristyStratton.com. And I would just love to help you in any way I can. And thanks again, Hirsch. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been great having you on. And as I said, we got to get you back on. So, Christy, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, at times getting quite vulnerable with your own story. And I appreciate how, you simplify some of these concepts, which is so important for people to understand. And just to know sometimes that there are people like yourself who can really help. I don't do it enough. I want to thank CC in the background. Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate the comment over there. And CC, thank you for working your magic behind the scene and helping us make this easy just to have a discussion. So I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me at lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. You can reach me with questions relating to anything that I do, or you can reach out if you need to get in touch with Christy and you missed her information. And I appreciate Christy being on as well. This has just been a great show, a lot of things covered. And I look forward to my next show next week. We're going to have Jennifer Lavin on. She is an Illinois attorney, and I think you will love the topic. Divorce, are you prepared? Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.